Oh yeah. Welcome back to another episode of Drafts with Jordan and Josh. I am one of your hosts, Mr. Jordan Plucker. With me once again, returning from Lord knows where, is my partner in crime,
Parts unknown,
Mr. Josh Liskowitz. Welcome back from chess camp, buddy.
Good to see you again, man.
Yeah. Glad you're back. Although I got to say, Bryson was better than you.
Well, I have to say it is no surprise after the reality check I give you every week that you chose the Canadian, the token nice guy at PFF to replace me for a week. But
non-threatening choice.
The beatings will continue until morale improves, I'm sorry to say.
Well, glad you're back from chess camp. Bryce and I were discussing that you were probably learning some cool new bishop strategies and that you could actually probably use the work because your chess game is weak. So,
well, you say that, but the reality is, in fifth grade, I was my elementary school's chess champion. So, eat it, Plucker.
I apologize for my stereotype. All right, Josh. Well, now that you are back, we are going to start off with our rookie rankings through week 11 from the talented Billy Moyes list on ProFootballFocus.com. Josh, there's literally been zero movement in our top five, but I wanted to sort of recap these guys. You don't know there was no movement because you were, again, doing Rook takes Queen. So number one on our list, Josh, still number one, has been for a while, is Marshawn Lattimore, the corner for the Saints. He's got a PFF grade of 92.7, still holding strong up there at number one. And he's really standing out in a lot of ways, Josh, as sort of a top cornerback just beyond rookies. I mean, a top quarterback in the league now that he's healthy, or when he's healthy, I should say.
Yeah, currently we have 33 players in the entire league, regardless of position, that have what we consider elite grades for the season. That's a grade of 90.0 or higher. And he's one of them. Jeez. So he's been locked down the entire year. He continues to be that way. And the Saints are a legit Super Bowl contender in large part because of his play. I do want to add, however, that you referred to Billy Moy as the talented Billy Moy. I think that should just stick. Like, whenever anybody at PFF refers to Billy, we should just call him the talented Billy Moy. That's his actual name.
I'm down with it.
I propose that going forward. Anyways, on to number two.
Number two on the talented Billy Moyes Rookie of the Year list here is Kareem Hunt, running back for Kansas City Chiefs. No surprise, like I said. PFF grade of 90.7, still holding strong. Again, not having the video game numbers of September per se, but still a very, very productive player.
Yeah, and I think he's hurt by those around him a bit at this point. I mean, they still have major issues on that offensive line with some of their best players have been missing for quite some time, and I think that's been an issue. He did bounce back a little bit last week, posting a grade north of 80.0 for the seventh time this season. So he's still playing well, but football's a team game, man, and you need other players around you to step up, and it's hard when you have no space around you. He still ranks third in elusiveness in the entire league, so that tells you that he's doing everything he can on that part, but as you said, the video game stats, they haven't been there as of late.
Coming in number three on the list is Tre'Davious White, the corner from the Buffalo Bills. He's got a PFF grade of 87.8, but he's been playing solid all year, Josh. I mean, from the beginning of the season, really sort of entrenching himself in the top five here. And, even though, things may have sort of fallen around them a bit on the Buffalo Bills defense, he's still playing at a high level.
Yeah, he really is. The rest of that defense is a mess, which is kind of what happens when you trade away Marcel Darius in the middle of the year. But Buffalo's got some issues going on, but certainly Tre'Davious White is kind of that glimmer of hope for the future for them, at least at this point. When you look at some of his stats, he's forced an incompletion, whether by interception or breakup or just the closest of his coverage, on 27.3% of passes into his coverage this year. That's seventh best among all cornerbacks. So very, very impressive about how active he is and throws into his coverage.
When you said glimmer, I got started thinking of that old terrible Steven Seagal movie. Wasn't it Glimmer Man? I think was
Glimmer Man. Wasn't that like a horror movie?
I think it was like a Seagal movie or something. Don't quote me. All right, number 4 on the list, Alvin Kamara, the running back for the Saints. Hey, Saints, congrats. You got 2 of the top 4 rookies so far. PFF grade of 85.2, Josh. And again, just silky smooth every time I see this guy carrying the ball.
He's a rich man's Christian McCaffrey, right?
Woo!
That's harsh. That's harsh because I'm a Christian McCaffrey fan. But I love Christian McCaffrey, and I don't think he's being used at full capacity at Carolina, and he's still on this list. But that being said, Alvin Kamara has been every single bit of everything we expected Christian McCaffrey to be this year in terms of being a receiving back, still being able to run between the tackles. That is just a nasty, nasty offense in New Orleans because they're so diverse, so capable of doing so many things. And Alvin Kamara is really possibly the number 1 guy at this point just because he offers so much to them.
All right, number 5 on the list is Desmond King, the corner from the Los Angeles Chargers, the guy that you and I both really like. PFF grade at 84.6. Again, Josh, we've talked about it many times in here before. It's like sometimes those guys may not have, the best, measurables, may not be the fastest corner or whatever, but they can just make plays. And man, he just keeps making plays every week.
One of just 13 cornerbacks to have at least 10 stops and covers this season. He does it against the run. He does it against the pass. He's just a complete guy that they understand how to put in position to succeed, and he's doing just that. And
this is sort of an inception here, but if you look on the article at ProFootballFocus.com, this part right here where it's talking about King, the talented Billy Moy talks about you and I and this podcast. So
he did.
Yeah.
Thanks for the shout out, the talented Billy Moy.
Yeah, thanks, Billy. Okay, Josh, that's the top 5. Like I said, nothing has changed in that top 5. It's held strong. But there was some movement on the very back end of the top 10. We had somebody sneak in there in the top 10, and that is the Los Angeles Rams safety John Johnson. He's now got a PFF grade of 81.1, and I know it's somebody you wanted to sort of like touch on because he snuck into the talented Billy Moy's list.
He has, and so he makes 4 defensive backs in the top 10, which isn't a surprise. Again, I'm not going to keep harping over how great a class it was, but this is case in point. But yeah, he's been outstanding this year. 0.29 yards surrendered per coverage snap. So he's been outstanding there on the back end for the Rams. One of the surprises of the league this year, and I'm excited to see how that team continues to progress. Obviously, they had a little bit of a setback this past week in Minnesota against one of the other hot teams. But I still think the Rams are going to be right there when all is said and done, and a lot of it is because of play of young guys like Mr. John Johnson.
Yeah, they had a good class as well. They had a great offseason, the Rams. The Rams and the Saints, I've been really impressed with. I even said on Twitter, and then the Eagles. Those are the 3 front offices that really impressed me this year with the way they've handled things. Josh, we are getting closer and closer and closer to the Reese's Senior Bowl. I can't believe I'm saying it. Isn't it exciting just to even say the word Senior Bowl, Josh?
Dude, we're like almost inside of 60 days away. I mean, we are there. We are so close.
Senior Bowl. It's just fun to say, yes. So, yes, well, Pro Football Focus had a partnership with the Reese's Senior Bowl for a couple of years now. We go down there and analyze practices and sort of provide data back to the teams. And so that way they can sort of grade how these players are performing, these one-on-ones in these key situations against these top competition. So it's really a little fun little extra layer of data that gets added on top of these performances, in addition to us just getting to go there and see them perform, or in Josh's case, to possibly get spit on and run over because he's down in the pit.
Yes, I do look forward to that.
So we are now in the time of the year, Josh, where we have some of these players who have now accepted invites to the Senior Bowl, which is very, very exciting. Like I said, now maybe we know we're getting closer and closer and closer. So we wanted to just sort of go over some of these guys who have accepted these invites and explain to you our handy listeners, why via PFF signature stat these players belong there, and why we think they'll probably be able to, for some of these guys, be able to play up to a very high level of competition. And we want to start out the list here, Josh, with Tyrell Crosby, the tackle from Oregon. He's really stood out to me earlier in the year with some of his run blocking, his ability to move on run blocks and block well in space, but he's really been getting it done as a pass protector this year.
Yeah, he really has. He's really number one in the country in terms of pass blocking. Pass blocking efficiency rating of 99.2. That ties him at number one among all FBS draft eligible offensive tackles. Has not allowed a sack or a hit in just 3 pressures, which is insane.
Yeah, so clearly he belongs there.
Yes.
Yeah. If you're the best pass blocking efficiency of all the senior tackles. All right. The next player down I want to discuss is the edge player / linebacker from USC Uchenna Nwosu. Again, I don't know what his position will be at the next level. Sort of a Hassan Reddick guy that I think can play on the edge, or sort of a different off-the-ball linebacker type role. But Josh, this year his pass rushing productivity and just his pass rushing in general is just really taken to the next level.
Yeah, I kind of like that Hassan Reddick comparison. And obviously Reddick was a guy that just had a monster week at the Senior Bowl last year. And really, he was a guy that people liked, but hadn't necessarily looked at all of his film yet. And once he blew up at Senior Bowl, everyone started to love him and became just an obvious first-round pick. But Nwosu, pass rush productivity, he's actually ranked number 27 among draft-eligible 34 outside linebackers, but his total quarterback hits of 20 and his batted passes of 11, both of those lead the country. So, he's providing high-level production in a number of ways.
And I know he rushes off both sides, so
yes,
he's going to.
That's also very valuable.
Yeah, so then he'll be one of those guys that might run you over, down in the pit. But it'll also be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see because we've seen it in the past where they'll move players around. So I wonder if they'll use him in more of an off the ball, stack linebacker type role. Yeah,
that's one of the great things about Senior Bowl is you get to see guys at various places that they haven't done yet. Roles sometimes you don't even consider them to be potential strengths of theirs going forward. So hopefully we do see that from him. But hey, let's move on. Let's stay out west in your neck of the woods, and actually a teammate of Mr. Crosby, a guy that we've been high on for a while. Was a little bit down last year, has come right back up this year. That's Royce Freeman at Oregon. And right back up in terms of elusiveness this year, Jordan.
Yeah, his elusive rating of 75.0 ranks number 20 among FBS draft-eligible running backs, which is pretty impressive. And again, when you talk about what he's been doing, Josh, he's forced 45 of his tackles as a runner and another 7 as a receiver. And he was doing a lot of that when, their starting quarterback has been injured. So, he's been the main focus. So
yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm glad you brought that point up because I think he's actually going to climb a little bit further. Obviously, they don't have much left. They have this coming game this week against Oregon State, who's not a particularly impressive defense, and obviously they'll have a bowl game. But I would imagine he's going to climb a couple spots as well, just because that battle station is fully armed and operational now, and they are scary.
And when we're discussing how he'll be in Mobile, one of the things, because a lot of those practices are not contact. So for the running backs to really stand out, one of the ways they can really stand out is as a receiver. So if Freeman can go there and really display hands and the ability to run routes in those practices, that should really help him.
No question.
All right, the next player we want to discuss, speaking of running routes, is Michael Gallup, the wide receiver from Colorado State. He is a PFF favorite. I think he's probably like number 1 overall in our grades. in our player 0 to 99 grades for wide receivers. And then, he's just been a beast all year, Josh. He's got 1,345 yards, receiving, and he's got, I think, 7 touchdowns on the year. But, he's really also stood out as far as, how one of the ways that we really like to keep track of wide receiver production in our signature stats, and that's that yards per route run.
Yeah, that's kind of a way to measure efficiency of production, and he's gaining essentially 3.43 yards per route he runs, which ranks number 6 among all FBS draft-eligible wide receivers. So that kind of tells you that he's, not just a deep threat, he's a consistent, every-down, go-to guy.
I'm really looking forward to seeing how he, muscles around the DBs, because he's just, a big, powerful guy.
Yep. Yeah, we've seen him against top-level competition. They had that game against Alabama, so I don't think he's going to, do anything but stand out as one of the top guys down there against all the Senior Bowl competition.
Good point, because you're right, he has really stood out well against top competition, against top corners he's faced. All right, another wide receiver we have on this list is Anthony Miller from Memphis. Physically much smaller than Gallup, a bit hyper productive as well. He's got over 1,000 receiving yards and 13 touchdowns. I saw a nice clip of him over the weekend blocking. Really aggressive block where he just basically took a DB all the way through the end zone, threw him out the club, Josh. But he's also been standing out according to our yards per route run stat.
Yeah, 3.18. That ranks him just a little bit behind Gallup at number 12 among FBS draft-eligible receivers. But again, very high in that regard, and certainly one of the most explosive, productive receivers in the country this year. No surprise to see him on the list. When you look at the list of top receivers in the country this year, it was pretty obvious that Gallup and Miller were going to get invites to this. It was just a matter of whether or not they were going to accept.
Yeah, another guy who falls into that category is Adam Brenneman, the tight end from UMass. He's a guy who's really stood out in our grading, even going back as far as last year. He basically just stood out like a sore thumb. We were talking about him over the summer, but he's standing out in numerous signature stats, and he's again one of those guys that coming from UMass is going to be able to play against the top competition as far as linebackers go, maybe some safeties and things like that. So it's going to be really exciting to see because Josh, he's really standing out in a lot of our stats.
Yeah, he's right at the top at just about everything. Number 1 in receiving yards for tight ends, number 1 in drop rate because he hasn't dropped any, and of the ones that haven't dropped any, he also has considerably more catches than everyone else. So basically he's number 1 in that regard as well. 1.90 yards per route run. That ranks 5th among tight ends, draft eligible tight ends with at least 30 targets too. So right up there in terms of efficiency as well. And he's one of those guys where I'm excited to see what he does against top level competition because didn't always get that at Massachusetts and certainly didn't get that from the rest of his offense there either.
Yeah, and we don't have the SIG stats to back it up on South Dakota State Dallas Goddard tight end, but that's the same thing. It's we're going to see another guy that really fun to watch him go play against the upper level competition.
Yeah, no question.
All right, so again, back to staying in like a group of 5 teams. There's a Marcus Davenport, the edge player from UTSA. He's been again a PFF favorite, graded really well for a while now. Very lengthy guy, but he's a you just don't think about an edge from UTSA being one of the premier pass rushers in the country, Josh.
Yeah, plus height, weight, speed, he's just a freak show. I think he's 6'10", 350 pounds, runs a 4.2 40, and I think he killed a bear when he was only 3. But he's number 1 among all draft-eligible defensive ends in pass rush productivity. He is as good as it's been, as good as it gets at the college level in terms of being an edge rusher. Yes. And so I cannot wait to see this guy. He's certainly going to be one of the most talked about guys from NFL teams. And I venture to say probably a first-time look for most of the media guys, even though we've known all year that he's certainly been among the top players in the country at his position.
Now that you mention it, Marcus Davenport will be one of the players that I'll be most interested in down there, just to see him going against those top tackles. But just, again, UTSA edge rusher just doesn't, it's just like, it's going to be so awesome to see that. This is such a great opportunity for players like that who, most of the country hasn't got to really a chance to see, on TV or see play or anything like that. And then, But our data just shows this guy is just really a phenomenal player, and now he's really going to get a chance to show it. Moving on to a guy who has had plenty of, coverage out there in the SEC, and that's Duke Dawson, the corner from Florida, a guy that we spoke about over the summer. Sort of an intriguing player, Josh, because he's got him kind of like that. I don't know. It's kind of a hybrid body, right? He's only like a 5'11", but he's like 200 pounds, so almost like a slot, almost like a safety, but just like super productive in coverage.
Well, I imagine we'll see a little bit of that down there, too. I bet you he's one of those guys that ends up playing multiple positions down there. So we'll see how he does out wide in the slot, as he's done a lot of at Florida and even at safety. We saw that with Tre'Davious White last year from LSU. Played all over the place at Senior Bowl and excelled wherever he was. Obviously went first round, and now he's still ranked, number 3 in terms of our Rookie of the Year rankings. So
he's in the top 5.
Not saying Dawson is of that caliber, has shown that, but he's still a high-quality player. 14.1 coverage snaps per reception out of the slot this year. That ranks 10th among draft-eligible cornerbacks that have at least 25 targets into their coverage this year. So very solid in that regard.
And we know the NFL teams love the college players who show they can cover in the slot.
No question.
All right. The next player on our list here is Jaleel Scott, the wide receiver, New Mexico State. He's a player that really stood out in our grading system basically in week 1. We already started talking about him internally, and then he just kept stacking great performances on top of great performances. And he's really stood out, Josh, for his ability to track the ball, not only in the red zone, but also deep and sort of, use that big frame. He's like 6'5", so he's going to be one of the taller wide receivers there. So, he's able to use that frame to, out position guys for the ball. Because I don't really think he's going to be the fastest guy, but he still manages to get the ball, to be a sort of big play threat.
Well, and you love it when you have a big guy like him that's able to get the deep ball. That's such a big thing to have that combination, because really it's lethal, because so often you're going to end up with those one-on-one matchups. And if you have a guy that big that's capable of getting downfield 20-plus yards, they're going to be a very, very big threat. And Jaleel Scott's been every bit of that. We talk a lot about Mr. Washington in Oklahoma State and his 15 deep pass receptions. That's receptions that travel at least 20 yards through the air. Well, Jaleel Scott is tied with him atop the lead in the country with 15 deep pass receptions. That ties all draft-eligible wide receivers for number 1 in the country. So very, very productive guy, dangerous downfield threat, and I think that's going to serve him well. And with the nature of the Senior Bowl, where you tend to have one-on-one man coverage reps, I think that's a place for him to shine.
Yeah, that's a really good call. Yeah, especially when they go down to that far end of the end zone and they start doing all those end zone fade routes and stuff. Yeah, it's a good call.
Oh, yeah.
All right, the last player we want to discuss here is one of the big players, Ian Thomas from Indiana, tight end. And there's a lot of talented tight ends already that are going to be on this list. But, one thing that I'm noticing, Josh, from a lot of these guys is that it's not necessarily that they're there for their run blocking. I'm not to say they can't run block, but these guys are there as pass catchers.
Oh, there's no question about that. And certainly the way the NFL has gone in recent years, that's kind of dictated as well. So those guys are going to be super valuable. Thomas is coming off a huge week, but in general, he's been very, very productive, very consistent with them. His yard per route run of 1.85, that ranks 6th among tight ends with at least 30 targets. So we talked about Brennaman at UMass ranking 5th. Thomas is right behind him in that, so he's every bit as productive.
All right, you guys, that will keep you up to date so far. But as these announcements trickle in over the span of the next couple of weeks here, we'll keep you, Josh and I'll keep you up to date.
I'm going to make a prediction.
Yes.
That we've listed 10 or 11 guys. I predict that there will be more players that accept Senior Bowl invites in the coming weeks. That is my prediction.
That is spicy bold. That is, that's like
just a hunch.
Bloody Mary
Working
with some Tabasco in it.
That sounds disgusting.
Who do you think will be the quarterbacks there?
Oh gosh.
Right? I mean, like I think that you gotta also if you invite Baker there, right? And
Yeah.
then I don't think
And I
Rosen
think
can
he has to
go.
go because of off field, because of size. He kind of has to go, right?
Sure, sure.
He's not a guy that can say I'm going to be a top 10 pick because there's certainly no guarantee with him.
I think Rudolph should be there, right? I think Falk
Yeah.
should be there.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of who else would be locks. Anyways, off the top of my head, that's who I can think of who should probably be there. But
Maybe Greer and Finley, Logan Woodside.
But yeah, so those Finley probably. Yeah, I think Greer's going to stay right at school. I'm not sure.
Oh, that's right. That's right. We did see that. Greer's going to stay for another year. How about Mr. Mike White, Western Kentucky?
That would be another good one.
That would be another one.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see who gets to go because there is some talented players who won't be eligible at that position. So
Yes.
But all right, you guys. So like I said, we'll keep you up to date on the Senior Bowl as we move forward. Josh predicts there will be more players accepting invites. Josh, how do you feel about hate?
Oh, I love Hate Week.
It
it.
is hate week, everybody.
It's hate week.
Josh loves hate. I give thanks for the hate week.
Yes.
We love hate week. We get great rivalry games. We get great performances in these hate week rivalry games.
Yeah.
So who do you want to start off with this week, Josh, when we talk about these games?
I want to start off with the Commonwealth Cup.
Oh, Virginia. I lived in Virginia for a couple of years. I lived in the Commonwealth. Yeah.
I lived very, very close.
You were a Marylander, right?
I was a Marylander about 20, 25 minutes away, depending on how awful traffic to D.C. was. So I was very close as well.
I was living in Virginia with all the lovers when I was stationed in Virginia Beach. But anyways, Commonwealth Cup, Josh, Virginia Tech versus Virginia. Tell me, who do you want to talk about? Who do you want to highlight from the Virginia Tech side?
Well, from the Hokies, we kind of have to talk about Greg Stroman, their cornerback. Look, that defense is just littered with top-end NFL prospect. That is an awesome
level
defense.
of the defense, yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And including the secondary has like 3 or 4 guys. But Greg Stroman has been absolutely ridiculous. 19.0 passer rating against when quarterbacks throw into his coverage.
I'm going to assume that ranks number 1. Is that ranked number 1 among corners?
That would be number 1 among all cornerbacks with at least 20 targets into their coverage this year. So, yeah, that's why we had to mention him among all those ridiculous prospects at Virginia Tech because he's been a stud.
Now, what about Virginia? I know they've got some prospects on each level of their defense as well.
They do, and their best is probably their safety. So, again, in the secondary, Quin Blanding. Among draft-eligible safeties with at least 200 run snaps, he ranks 10th in run stop percentage. Pretty good player in coverage, too. So, it'll be fun to watch those guys. Obviously, the game, those two teams never seem to quite match up in terms of being great. But there's still a lot from a prospect angle to look at from both of these teams, certainly on the defensive side of the ball, and certainly led by Stroman and Vatek and Virginia's Quin Blanding.
Let's stay out there in ACC territory then, Josh, and let's talk about the Palmetto Bowl.
Yes, the battle for the best state flag, I must say.
Which sounds, again, the Palmetto Bowl just sounds disgusting because, again, I just think of the Palmetto bug. How is it? I mean, the South Carolina flag is cool, but don't you think Maryland's flag is badass?
Oh, my God. Maryland's flag is just a hot mess. Are you kidding me? No, this is South Carolina is another state I lived very close to because I lived literally within 2 minutes of the state border, about 20 minutes north of Myrtle Beach for 3 years in North Carolina. So I hold a little place in my heart for both of these schools. But Clemson, they've got some offensive linemen, Jordan.
They do.
Their left tackle, Mitch Hyatt, left guard, Taylor Hearn. They are very good in pass pro. Each of them has given up just 1 sack and 1 hit this year, which is absurd. We talked all year long about how good the Notre Dame duo was. These guys have been even better. So that's certainly something to look for in this game and going forward really with Clemson. And
I know because, I mean, like when we think about Clemson, we always think about the, plethora of defensive linemen. So it's interesting that you chose to highlight these offensive linemen. It shows you that they are playing well.
Yes, absolutely. And for South Carolina, how about linebacker Skai Moore? He's a guy that's been on people's radars for quite a bit. He's been one of the better tacklers in the country the last couple months, really. In 6 of his last 7 games, he has not missed a single tackle. And for a linebacker that's as active as he is, that is a pretty ridiculous stat.
That is a ridiculous stat. You guys love that type of production. Okay, and does the winner have to eat a palmetto bug, or does the loser have to eat like a palmetto bug? Is that how that works?
What about a palmetto tree? Can they just plant a new tree?
Oh, maybe. Loser has to plant a tree.
I think so, yeah.
Speaking of trees, let's go out west, Josh, to the Apple Cup.
Yeah.
Between Washington State and Washington. There are prospects, NFL prospects, Josh, on both sides of the ball. There's really talented players. I like apples. I prefer red apples to green apples.
I'm with you there.
You like
no? I'm with you there. Okay. You are right on that.
So, talk about some red apples then in this game. Who are the top prospects to watch?
Well, I think you got to look at the interior defensive line on each side to find the most exciting guys. And it's funny because their stats match up. They're real close to each other nationally as well. Vita, of course, in Washington. He's been our number 2 draft-eligible defensive tackle for a year now at this point. But he's number 5 in terms of draft-eligible defensive tackles and run-stop percentage this year. That's actually one spot higher than Mr. Hurst out in Michigan, who we may or may not be discussing a little bit further later on. But then you go to Washington State, and they, of course, have the undersized Hercules Mataafa, and he ranks number 4, tied with Mr. Vita in pass rush productivity. So both these guys are right up there among the leaders in the country at what they do, and it's going to be fun to watch them go back and forth.
And a little-known fact, they're actually identical twins. I don't know if you know that, but they're actually not. They're the weight difference between them is probably about 100 pounds. So
that's all. Yeah.
It's literally probably close to a 100-pound difference. So totally,
they may be different players, even though they play the same position.
Totally different ways of winning, but both highly productive players and both a lot of fun to watch. So that'll be a good matchup. Not necessarily that they're playing against each other, but I mean that in those teams. So like I said, there's plenty of talent on those teams. All right, Josh. The next one I want to talk about is the Iron Bowl, which everyone knows the winner gets to throw an iron at the loser, or does the loser have to iron the uniforms of the winners?
Maybe they have to attach an iron ball to their leg and walk with. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sure. I don't know where I'm going with this.
But it's the iron. It's the Iron Bowl, which apparently the winners get some form of iron. So Josh, again, when we're talking Alabama and we're talking Auburn, I mean, especially from Alabama, I mean, prospects every year, Josh. It's an NFL factory. Auburn's also got some good guys coming out. A lot of them have been coming out on the defensive side of the ball, including one of our faves, Carl Lawson, who's tearing it up right now. But who do you want to highlight on this present form of the Auburn defense?
Well, I want to talk about someone that probably isn't getting a ton of love, but really should be. How about Jeff Holland, one of their edge players?
A lot of production.
10 sacks, 11 hits. That is a ton of production. And in fact, that's actually number 5 among draft-eligible edges in terms of combined sacks and hits. So, I mean, that's outstanding. And I'm interested to see how he does against that Alabama group, because I think he can put up some numbers there and give them some problems, because he has been consistent throughout the entire season in terms of getting after the quarterback and finishing.
Now, what about Alabama's offense? They've got some talented players at the skill positions. Why don't you talk about your favorite one there?
Yeah, my absolute favorite one is, of course, the receiver, Calvin Ridley. He may be 74 years old. I don't care. He's spectacular. 3.34 yards per route run. That's number 1 in the SEC, number 8 in the entire country. So he's not just a big play guy in spurts. He's a very, very consistent, reliable playmaker for Alabama. And I think he's going to be an extremely high pick come this spring.
Now, as a Michigan man, do you have anything going on this week? at all? Like like any big games or any events?
I don't know. I just had a second kid, so maybe a nice little Saturday trip to the Home Depot.
Second kid? Is that where you were? I thought you were a chess kid.
Yeah. We were having a second kid, so now I got two of them. So
well, congrats, buddy.
Thank you, sir.
So two kids. Beyond the two kids, anything else big in your life?
Probably the big game I'll be watching on Saturday.
The big game. That is one hate-filled contest. These fan bases do not like each other. I know there's fans that say that about rivalry games, but man, Josh, this one holds true.
It's so above and beyond in this matchup, and I don't think it's my own personal bias either. It's just is what it is. There's there's all the other rivalries, and then there's Ohio State, Michigan. Unfortunately, obviously, my guys in blue have not lived up to the caliber that Ohio State has been able to produce recently. But that doesn't mean Michigan does not have individual guys worthwhile, worth discussing at that point. Certainly Maurice Hurst is that guy. I don't know how he is not the defensive player of the year in the entire country. I mean, he's been spectacular the entire season. He's our highest graded defensive player regardless of position in the country. Number one in pass rush productivity. I mentioned his run stopping ability earlier. So, I mean, he is outstanding in every single facet. He's in our Big Ten Team of the Week, National Team of the Week almost weekly. What else is there to say about him?
Now, he is going to be, facing off. I mean, Ohio State has one of the better interior offensive linemen in the country, in old Billy Price.
Old Billy Price. That's another nickname of yours that I think has to stick for no reason at all, but I just like old Billy Price.
It just sounds like an old-timey ball player name.
Yeah. When you talk about the pass rush productivity of Hurst, well, Price has been at the very top of the country in terms of ability to defend his quarterback. 0 sacks, 2 hits allowed this entire season.
0 sacks.
And,
Zero
so
sacks,
I'm excited to see this one.
Hurst is going to be across from him.
Yes. That might change. That number could change this week. But I don't know how much of an impact it'll have on the overall score because I think Ohio State has way too much and Michigan is young and inexperienced and obviously banged up at the quarterback position. But in terms of this matchup and draft prospects, this is as good as it gets.
All right, and that will close us out this week, you guys. We'll be back after the Thanksgiving break next week to discuss. I guess we'll be going into like the championship games, right? Because college season's winding down.
That's right.
So, all right, you guys, we will talk to you next week. Josh, anything you want to say or be thankful for on the way out?
Thankful we're done talking to you.
Bye, everybody.